When I lived in Turku, I lived there for, like I said, I lived there for 8 months. And our apartment, it was like 2 buildings away from the Aura River. Aurajoki. Oh my gosh. I'm stumbling over these Finnish words because I haven't spoken it in a long time. We were right across the river from the Tuomiokirkko, which is the big Lutheran cathedral in Turku, and it's like almost 1,000 years old. I think it was built in like the 1100s sometime, and then they built it up and up and up over time. Every day, the bells chimed. You know, they chimed on the hour, and then they chimed every 15 minutes. So it was there when I woke up in the morning, the bells chimed, and we were usually in our apartments for a couple hours in the morning studying Finnish. I didn't realize how much I missed the chiming of the bells until I moved, but that was one of my favorite things. And every time I hear church bells or a bell tower, I think of my apartment in Turku and the bells of the Tuomiokirkko ringing every day for 8 months. That will always be something I miss. I keep coming back to this, but one of the biggest culture shocks was the quietness. Like, it was weird not to have conversations on the bus. I'm an introvert, but I also realize that I'm kind of a loud person. Like, when I am having conversations or hanging out with friends or whatever, like, I can be very loud, and that's not normal. So that was something I had to adjust to. I became a very quiet person. You can't tell anymore, but like when I came home from Finland, I was very quiet. I mean, obviously, not being able to speak the language for such a long time was not exactly a culture shock per se, but definitely an adjustment. I just think of all the times when I was trying to communicate with people so hard because I really wanted to learn Finnish, and I think Finnish is a beautiful language personally, but you know, like not being able to communicate, it definitely forced me to learn how to communicate in different ways, and a lot of that was achieved by learning about the culture and learning to understand the people and trying to adopt some of their idiosyncrasies and unique ways of saying stuff or thinking about things. I really wanted to like stay true to myself, but also assimilate a little bit because I came to value the place so much. So I wanted to like be a little more like the Finns that I met. It definitely played a role in not always knowing how to act while I was learning to respect their traditions. You know, Finnish is a difficult language, and it took me a while to feel comfortable. I'm kind of a grammar freak in general. Like, I love English. Like, when I was in school, like, that was one of my favorite subjects was English. So I already love grammar, and I picked up the rules of the language very quickly. And when I was like in casual conversation, like when I was practicing, I was fine. But the minute you're in the room with a Finn, it's like everything's out the window, especially when you've only been in the country for like a couple months. There was this young college guy that we were visiting with regularly and teaching, and it was kind of a funky situation. He lived in this tiny studio apartment. Like, I'm talking, you walk in, there's a little bathroom on your side, and then there's a kitchenette, and then the rest, it's like a bedroom, and that's it. And so it was a small little student apartment. He had this luxurious long red hair, and he was a very tall, very big guy. He was probably like 6'6". Like, I mean, I'm 5'1", so everyone is tall compared to me, but he was big, and he spoke so quickly. And so when we were coming to teach him, it was a slightly weird situation because he just had this bedroom essentially, and so my friend and I, we would sit on like the edge of his bed and talk to him, and he would stand in the kitchenette with his like little cup of water and just, you know, talk to us. I had like just come to the country pretty much when we started meeting with him. My companion, my friend, she had been there for like 6 months maybe, and she also was very good grammatically at the language, but even the most diligent students of Finnish only have so much of a grasp of it after 6 months. We sat on the edge of his bed, and he stood in the kitchenette, and we would have these conversations or pretend to have conversations because he would just go off. And like I said, he was a very fast talker. And in Turku, this is where I was, they already have kind of a dialect where they sort of chop words in half, and they have a tendency to leave the ends off of lots of words, and it's just kind of a colloquial thing that they do locally. So I was already like a huge fish out of water, and I did not follow anything that he said. Not only that, but he smoked recreationally like flavored tobaccos like peach. He told us this one time he liked peach and strawberry the best. And so there was always kind of this heady sweet smell in his room, and it was warm because it was summertime. So with the combination of him just sounded like a motor, just kind of a buzz of words. So combined with that and the warmth and not understanding what he was saying and the sweet smell of these tobaccos, I think I fell asleep every single time we visited him. I don't even know if he noticed. My companion noticed, but I was just sitting there. My head would nod a little bit, probably for a couple minutes every time. Picking up on the language took a long time, and running into someone like him who spoke so quickly, like I just was so lost. every time. So pretty much everyone in Finland has a parveke, which means balcony, or at least all the people who live in apartment complexes do. My friend and I, we were out in this neighborhood that was not like the nicest neighborhood. I mean, like everywhere in Finland is pretty safe, but this was one of the slightly lower income neighborhoods. And we were just walking around. We were trying to find a particular street, actually. We're trying to visit a friend, but we couldn't find the street, and the map was not very clear. And we didn't have a smartphone at the time, so we had a book with the map pages torn out of the phone book and just like in the laminated sleeves, like in a binder. So we're looking at this map, and we're trying to find the street, and we see this man smoking on his balcony, which is pretty normal. And he was on the first floor, so we, hollered up, and we're like, hey, like, do you know whatever the street name, do you know where it is? And he said yes, but then we got into a conversation, and I was there as a missionary, as a church representative, and so he knew about our church. He'd heard about it, and he started telling us the story. It was really weird. Okay, I'm gonna preface that it was very strange, but he started talking about how Jesus was a cyborg, and that Mary was like experimented on by aliens, and that's how she got pregnant, and that Jesus was just this like narcissistic, it's all about me, cyborg alien life form, and it was very strange. And I had only been, this was like my first month or so, maybe 2 months in the country, so he was talking to us in English. He went off, and man, it was so strange. And I was so confused, because again, I was new, and I was like, this guy is whack. And then he started telling us about how he had like visions and all this stuff, and he like saw the creation of the world and all these things. And this is gonna sound crazy to people who don't understand what missionaries do, but we'd given him our contact information, we'd given him our phone number. Before he started saying all these nutso things, we were like, oh, like maybe we'll talk to him later. But by that point, we were like, okay, like you might be crazy. You might also just be trying to pull the wool over our eyes or pull our leg or something, but we gotta go. And the next morning, we were just studying, and we get a phone call, and my friend picks up the phone, and I just see her face like completely go white. It wasn't that dramatic, but she just got very concerned really quickly, and I just hear her say like, no, thank you, no, we're okay, have a nice day, and hung up. And she turns to me and she says, he just asked us if we want to be his disciples. And I was like, you said no, right? I don't think he really meant anything by it. Later, I was like, that's potentially concerning, but we never saw him again, so it just ended up being a weird anecdote that people get a crack out of. So that was probably the weirdest thing that I remember happening. It was winter. I was in Kuopio, which is kind of like halfway up the country, headed north. And we actually had a pretty mild winter as far as I understand it. Like it can get pretty cold there. It can get up to like -40 Celsius, though it hasn't been quite that cold recently, at least not or maybe it has. I haven't been there for 5 years, so maybe it has. I was walking with my friend, and she fell a lot. She didn't have very good balance, and it was icy all over the place, and so she slipped regularly. I hadn't fallen a single time in the snow, and I didn't brag about it, but I was like, yeah, like no bruised tips for me. And we were down in some neighborhood, just wandering around, enjoying the scenery. At one point, I think there was like a frozen lake, and we walked out on the water a little bit, which is cool. We didn't go too far because we were scared of falling in. But we were coming back up a hill. Again, like I said, I hadn't fallen a single time, and I hadn't noticed, but the pathway on the hill was a pretty steep hill. The pathway was very icy, and I didn't realize it. And so I take a step, and I go straight down, like face first, palms on the ground. I just like biff it so hard, and she loses her mind. She thinks it's the funniest thing in the world. I wasn't hurt, I got up and I was fine, but she lost it. That was the only time that I fell. I slipped a few times, but that was the only time I fell. But when I fell, I completely wiped out. Those Finnish winters are no joke. It's very icy. So make sure you have good treads on your boots. That was a lesson that I learned. The Aura River does it for me every time. I was in Turku for 8 months, and that was the first place I lived, and so that hands down is my favorite place. I also got to know the people in Turku a lot differently. So, when we go to church, we have a congregation, and I got to know that congregation very well, and some of my dearest friends are from that congregation. I love Kuopio. I also lived in Tampere for 2 months. I love both of those cities, but Turku will always be my favorite, and I'm sorry to people from Tampere who might see this. I love your cities, I love you, but Turku will always be my city. I love the Finnish language. I am kind of a grammar freak, so it was really easy for me easy is a relative term. I mean, it's still a difficult language, but compared to some of the other missionaries that were learning Finnish, I always felt like I learned very quickly, and I thought I got pretty good at it, not gonna lie. So when I came home from Finland, from, here 5 years ago or whatever it was, I went to school, I went to BYU, and they had some Finnish courses that they offered. The teacher, her name's Aino, which is a very common Finnish female name. And it was like a lot of beginner basic stuff, but when you're going to a country and learning a language with the purpose of being like a church representative, being a missionary, you primarily learn churchy lingo. We learned grammar, we learned a lot of church words, and then we learned some of the basics. And then while you're in Finland, you pick up on a lot more like conversational Finnish. So having these classes was actually really useful to me when I came back, because we learned a lot more of the conversational Finnish, but also technical terms for other topics. And so I learned a lot more general Finnish instead of just like churchy words. I think I took like 4 semesters of Finnish when I got back. So that helped me keep it up. And then when I visited 3 years ago, I was really nervous to go back. I was excited obviously to go to Finland, but I was nervous because I was planning on speaking Finnish because I wanted to, because I knew how. But I was like, what if I'd forgotten everything? What if I go and it's like super hard to communicate with people? The first day was kind of uncomfortable. My mom and I were there for 2.5 weeks. They say it's like riding a bike. It really is. Like, I got back into it so fast. It's funny, I actually felt more comfortable speaking Finnish as a tourist, not living there, than I did when I was living there as a missionary. And I think part of it was that as a missionary, there's a little bit of a pressure to like speak to people. And if you're talking to people, you're hoping it's going to turn into a church-related conversation. But going as a tourist, there wasn't that like same pressure. I don't know what it was. I just felt a lot more free to talk to people. And so like I was a lot less self-conscious of like asking someone for directions, which is so funny that here I am, I haven't spoken Finnish in 3 years, and then on top of that I was meeting up with friends and people that I knew and I'd met when I was living in Finland. Coming back to Finland, 2 of the greatest compliments I got about my Finnish, when I was in Kuopio, I was visiting the congregation there, and these people that I had been amongst for 6 months, that's how long I lived in Kuopio. One of the women that I interacted with the most when I lived there, she said to me, and my mom was there, and my mom's just, she's like, I'm speaking Finnish, and my mom's just like, I'm sure she's doing a great job, doesn't understand a thing. She knows how to say rakkaudella, because that's how I always signed, whenever I emailed home, it means like with love. She knows to say kiitos, which is thank you, but she doesn't know much else. So this woman from the congregation, she said, I can't remember exactly what she said, I just remember she said ihmeellistä, which is the partitive conjugation of the word for miraculous. And she's like, your Finnish is miraculously good. And I was like, thank you. Because I take a lot of pride in that, and I thought I knew it pretty well, and I was scared to come back and speak it, and for her to say that, I was like, dang it, that's awesome. The second one, when I was in Turku, again, when I was visiting with my mom, there's this family whom I adore with all of my heart. When I lived in Turku, they were like some of the most welcoming people. They're hilarious. The husband is so funny, and they're such a loving couple, and they were so kind to us, and their kids were great and everything. So when I was visiting with my mom, I made sure that we would have dinner with this family because I missed them the most. I probably shouldn't say that because I don't know who I know who's gonna watch this video. They're gonna be jealous. So we had dinner there, and while I was in the bathroom, my mom told me later that she had been talking to the couple. I don't remember exactly how the conversation went down, but basically he said, oh no, yeah, she's very good at Finnish. And my mom said, well, I just, I wasn't sure if it was just, missionary Finnish or like Finnish in general. He said, no, she's like, she understands it. She understands the grammar. Like, she gets it. She told me that yesterday. I was like, yeah, because again, I took a lot of pride in that. I love the grammar. So for people to say that about my Finnish, it was reassuring because I always felt like my Finnish was really good. But then to have actual Finnish people tell that to me, even when I got to Turku for the first time, I went to church that Sunday, one of the women in that congregation in Turku had asked me if I was a singer. Not professionally, but I do sing a lot, and I, did choir in high school and stuff like that. And I said, well, yeah, like, how did you know? And she explained that when you speak Finnish, it's kind of like in the front of your mouth. English kind of lives around the back of your tongue, and then like other languages like French and like Danish and stuff are really guttural, but Finnish kind of lives here, and it's a very lyrical language. And so she could tell that I was a singer because I spoke Finnish in the front of my mouth instead of in kind of the back of your mouth where a lot of the other American missionaries would speak their Finnish, which is nothing against them because again, like, Finnish is hard. It's not easy to learn another language, let alone learn to speak it the way that the natives do. And so when she asked me that, I'd only been in the country for like a week. That was really reassuring to me. That was really confidence boosting to hear them say that. there was another girl that I knew really well. She worked with us a lot. She complimented my accent a couple times, which again, very confidence boosting, and hit a little bit of a prideful note for me. I was like, yeah, that's right. I speak Finnish like a Finn. Obviously you can tell I'm an American, but she did say, she was like, it would be hard to tell that you were an American speaking Finnish. Take some pride in that. Do I still sound like that? I don't know. But if I were to go back and, be amongst them for an extended period of time again, then I probably would pick up on it again. I have kind of a parrot brain when it comes to speaking, so I like pick up on people's laughs and people's phrases that they use a lot. So I really wanted to make sure I sounded authentic, and I guess I achieved it.